Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here to share a 10 cards 1 kit video of sorts with you featuring the October 2017 My Monthly Hero Arts card kit. It is currently December, so I'm quite behind on my card kits and just getting farther and farther behind on my card kits because I have not touched my November card kit and it's December. But I decided I wanted to try to do something a little bit quicker and share something with you. So this video is going to be a bit different. I'm not going to do as many innovative designs in the sense that I'm not going to make 12 or I'm making 12 cards, but I'm not going to make 10 unique cards. Instead, I'm going to show you more of a mass production style and just stamp a bunch of different scenes. So here I'm kind of going through the things in the kit, but the kit is sold out. It's been sold out, so it's not like you can go ahead and purchase any of them. But it did come out with these really beautiful pieces of cardstock, and in effort to make these things simpler on myself, I decided, well, then I'm going to just use these fancy pieces of pattern paper. Because something that I'm kind of guilty of is I'll get these fancy patterns, these cool papers in card kits, and I don't use them on my 10 cards 1 kit for whatever reason, and then I never use them at all because after I've made 10 cards with a kit, I don't have time. I'm moving on to the next card kit because the next card kit has already come in the mail. So I've been reducing the number of card kits I've been receiving. I'm deciding not to subscribe to as many just because I personally can't keep up, even though I enjoy sharing the videos and working with the kits. I think that, the Hero Arts kits are really good value. I am not trying to knock the kits by any means. I just, like I said, I can't keep up. So maybe ordering every other month or something like that would be better suited for me personally. Anyway, I decided to take the pattern papers and cut them up, which meant that I'm cutting them to 4.5 by 3.5, I believe, or 3 1/4. 4.5 by 3 1/4, I think. Unless these are the ones that I'm accidentally cutting too small. Could be. I think those are the ones. I accidentally cut one of the sheets too small. But I was able to get 2 pieces out of one, which is really the key there, so that you can get more cards. And then I cut a black piece of paper to 4 by 5 1/4 so that I could mat the fancy papers on black and then put it on a white folded card base. The Hero Arts kits don't come with cardstock. A lot of kits come with 5 pieces of cardstock so you can make 10 cards, but they don't, and I'm totally okay with that because I can, buy cardstock in bulk and works out well and it's cheaper. So I just added white card bases, and the black mat in between. Then I cut a bunch of cross-stitched circles from the same white cardstock. It's like I said, the Recollections 110 pound from Michaels because it works well with Copics and I can use a coupon and it makes it cheap. And this particular die size that I picked looked like it was going to go well on my cards, and I tested it out by laying it on top of the layered panels there. So now I want to just stamp a bunch of scenes. I have all the pieces cut out. I think that I'm making 12 cards in all because there's 6 sheets. You cut them in half, turns into 12. So, sorry, I'm trying to stay focused on my train of thought here, kind of late at night. And I know that all of the stamps are brand new. So when I stamp them, they might not stamp perfectly. Brand new stamps don't always stamp perfectly. But as I mentioned, having a hard time running through all these kits, I'm not using these stamps a bunch. They're not my well-loved stamp sets that I've stamped a million times. So I'm going to use my Misty. That way when I stamp them and they don't turn out perfect, I'm not frustrated. I can just re-stamp the image. So I said so 17,000 times. Sorry, guys. I put the cross-stitched circles down, some magnets on top, and I arrange one of the stamps from the stamp set that I like, or a few stamps, to create a scene. I found that most of the stamps did fit in these circles. However, there were a few stamps from the stamp set that are quite a bit larger and aren't able to fit in the scenes. However, many of them I was actually able to get 2 or 3 things in the scenes as well, because with this particular stamp set, everything is super, super tiny, which is adorable, but it's also pretty intimidating thinking about coloring with Copics, because Copics can bleed. And if you're coloring in a really small space and you're trying to blend two colors, you're adding a lot of ink to a small space and you're more likely to get bleeding. So if you're not comfortable using the Copics, then maybe really sharp colored pencils, or not do so much blending on your Copics for this particular stamp set is what I kind of leaned towards. I didn't do nearly as much blending as I often do. I think I did like 2 colors tops. And as I was making these scenes, I was kind of just thinking, like, which of these stamps to me are the cutest, the ones I really want to make sure that I get a chance to use, because honestly, I'm not sure that I'm going to have time to use, to make any more cards with this kit before this holiday season is over. And then next year, I don't know about you, but I have a hard time like going back and using some of my old stamps, because I get new stamps every season. And I know that the simple answer to this problem is stop buying stamps, Jess. Anybody with me? We're going to all just stop buying stamps. I mean, anyway. So I'm like, if I'm only going to use this stamp set one time, I am going to use the heck out of it. I'm going to use a whole bunch of images. I'm going to use everything that I think is cute. I made some images of the elves with toys, the elves in the workshops. I really liked, there was like a wolf, and I wanted him to be kind of looking up at the mountains, and there were the really cute little carolers. I thought about which ones could create a fun scene around them, and then which ones would be simpler and I wouldn't have to do a detailed scene, because the main reason that I'm sharing this, 10 cards with you, not because I'm doing anything super interesting in terms of making the cards, because all of the cards are exactly the same. They're a piece of pattern paper on a piece of black cardstock on a card base with a circle in the middle. You don't need to see me do that 1,000 times. Is I thought I could share some tips about coloring small panels like this. So I'm just going to show you a few. It's a little bit shorter for a 10 cards, 1 kit video than the average one. I took some Distress Oxide inks. I covered part of my scene because here are my carolers, and I want it to look like they are on a sidewalk, but I want to be quick about it. I don't want to have to use my Copics to color the sidewalk. So I just took a piece of Scotch masking tape, Post-it tape, Scotch Post-it tape, and I laid it straight across right at their feet, kind of overlapping with the black lines of their feet. And then I was able to just mask off a quick sidewalk. Then for the sky, I don't want to have to color a sky around these teeny tiny people. So what I chose to do, and what I've done many times in the past, is create a sort of halo white effect around the main scene and just put Distress ink everywhere else. I find that tends to still look okay. You don't need to color right up to the edge of them. You could be a crazy person, and sorry, that sounds mean, but I think it would be crazy to mask them off. It would be super cute, and more power to you if you want to, but to mask them off would be a lot of work. You could just color around them. If you're going to use them a bunch, then, maybe it's worth creating the mask, but I'm telling you, teeny tiny stamps. So instead, I'm just going to take my finger dauber and, just go very close to the edge. And then when I start coloring these little guys in, I'm just going to use one color and barely shade at all. And even using just one color, as I apply my Copic marker, I'm just touching it to the paper, just barely making contact. Because if I let it kind of linger for any amount of time, it's going to drop so much ink that it is going to bleed out the sides. So I hope if you are trying to color these images and we're getting a little bit frustrated, thinking about it with that perspective might be helpful. Now, there are occasionally areas, like her dress is a little bit bigger, so I probably can go in and add a second color, and that's what I'll do. I'll just I think that I'm using an R27 and I have an R29, so I'll put just a touch of R29 where the dress meets either their hands or the top of their the top of the dress, just to kind of give it a bit of dimension. But anything beyond that, especially with reds, because they're notorious for bleeding, it's going to be all over the place. So I also decided to pull in a lot of traditional Christmas colors, and another way of saving time with this particular set of cards was when I picked a set of reds that I wanted to use, I just kept using those same red colors over and over again. When I picked a set of greens, I just kept using those same greens over and over again. I didn't try to pick out new markers every time. I just kind of left that pile sit on my desk as I continued through the cards. Just again to make things a little bit faster, get through these cards a little bit quicker. So here I also wanted to add some sentiments. In this case, what I would actually suggest doing is making a bunch of the circle panels and then choosing to add sentiments afterwards, because it'll go a lot faster rather than having to pick out a sentiment for each one if you're trying to mass produce. Then here I also wanted to make use of the silver embossing powder that was in the kit, and I decided to emboss some snowflakes around them. This is actually another step that I would suggest doing multiple panels at one time rather than simply like finishing off each and every little panel one at a time. I would suggest doing them individually. Now, I realized I didn't actually stamp a sentiment. I thought I was going to. I just did the embossing there, but I will stamp a sentiment on the bottom of that card eventually, I believe. And then I was just going to show you quickly the sort of assembly of one, but what I, again, would recommend doing, and eventually what I did off screen, for the other like 11 cards I made, is I, took all the black panels and glued them onto all the white pieces of cardstock. Then I glued all the pattern papers on top of the black papers, and I had all of those sitting ready to go so that as I finished a panel, like I finished the little carolers, I could simply put them right onto whatever pattern paper seemed to work out best for me. Now with these small panels, I did kind of limit myself to which particular sentiments would fit on them, and so I was able to use the 'Tis the Season sentiment quite a bit. Again, recommending you stamp it on a few at the same time and not going through completely assembling each card independently if you're going to try a mass production thing such as this. But I wouldn't necessarily stick it in my MISTI because the place that you're going to stamp it could be different from card to card. So again, I did the thing where I masked off the bottom, and I was able to basically create a floor very, very quickly. And then I'm going to come in and add the sky. And this time I'm going to use the Copics to, well, not a sky because they're indoors, like the wall, but the top half of the card. So I don't want to go in with distress markers or crayons this time. Not distress markers, oh my gosh. Distress ink. I might need to re-record this video, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't want to go in with distress ink this time because there's so much more detail in this image that trying to leave the halo would leave probably too much white space. And I did the same technique with the wolf card that you'll see at the end, and I'm going to make a blog post that goes with this so that you can just look at the still images of this card, see a couple scenes that I made if you don't want to listen to me blather on about nonsense, because apparently I can't put words together today. What I did was I went into the detailed areas first, kind of completely covering those with my lightest marker, and then I started doing these flicking strokes out. You have to be comfortable using a lot more ink to create a background is what I've generally found. You're going to use up a lot more of your marker coloring in a large background than you are going to using just coloring in tiny little images. And you're going to have to work in smaller spaces because the ink will start to dry and it'll be harder to blend, and then you'll have to add even more. So again, I'm just kind of like, when I went in with my darker color, even though I'd covered the whole surface with the light green, I decided to only cover a small bit of the surface with the dark green and then start trying to blend it out again. I also found that I had to add a third color of marker to blend downwards as well, because trying to get a blend and work around these teeny tiny spaces was quite the challenge. So I was kind of blending from two ends, which is a little bit different than my standard technique as well. And again, coming in with that darker color, covering just part of the space. Now, the workbench actually saves me a bit of effort there, because with the workbench, it's okay for it all to be dark and I don't have to blend it out as much. So I'm using the G94 and 99 that I had picked out earlier, because like I said, once I picked some G colors, I was just going to use them throughout. And then I didn't have anything much lighter, so I had to go over to the YGs, and I picked something that was close. I like to use my hex chart for swatching, because being in that sort of color order that Sandy Allnock has come up with is more effective for me seeing the colors than to just put them in number order. It kind of opens up my eyes to the possibilities of markers that go together that might not seem so obvious at first. And so here's another example where I was able to use that blue sky in order to I was able to use Distress Inks to create that blue sky and leave the halo around the images. And this time, I'm going to actually use the silver embossing powder that comes in the kit, because at first I was like, well, it's silver embossing powder. I'll just use whatever silver embossing powder I have already, and why not just throw this one in with the other silver embossing powder I already have and just make like one big pile of silver embossing powder? The answer is because this silver embossing powder that came with the kit is actually fine detail embossing powder, I think, because when I stamped it, and when I stamped the snowflakes and covered them, I actually got a lot more detail than when I had used the, standard embossing powder from my collection. So if you're looking for fine detail embossing powder, you have it in the kit, and try that instead, and don't make the same mistake as I did and think, oh, well, I don't need to use this new stuff because I have it, or whatever. And this is where I'm actually following my advice from earlier, and I'm stamping a bunch of snowflakes at one time on a couple of different panels, so that way I don't have to take out the materials the whole time. And once I've stamped a few things, like, as I've stamped them and I applied embossing powder, like I stamped a sentiment, put embossing powder on it, stamped some snowflakes, put embossing powder on it. I put them off to the side, and now I'm going to heat them and melt all the embossing powder at one time, because that's also faster, because you have to wait for your heat gun to sort of heat up before it will really actually, melt the embossing powder. So again, it just makes the process a lot faster, and you don't have to kind of stop for each and every step. And, I hope that makes sense. So stamping both sentiments at the same time, covering both sentiments with it. There was something else that I want to make sure I mention before the video is over, and you know this if you have the kit, but the Hero Arts glitter paper sheds like crazy. Like, there are no words for how bad that glitter paper sheds. Normally, the paper like that sheds that much, I would just like put in a bag and get rid of. And I know it sounds pretty harsh, but like, I donate a lot of my cards. You can't always add glitter to cards that you donate, because if the people that you're donating to have health concerns, glitter can be difficult for their lungs, etc., etc. So a lot of times I'll just get rid of that paper. I won't use it in my craft room. But in this case, I knew I was going to make a whole bunch of cards at one time and then clean up everything. I was like, I'm going to finish this kit all in one go, make all these cards, and clean my surface really good and not do any projects in between. So here I'm like aggressively trying to rub the glitter off, hoping that if I get enough of it, it'll stop shedding. It doesn't stop shedding. And once I finish these cards, I put them in a plastic bag because I didn't want glitter everywhere, all over my room, and every time I try to touch them, and it's coming off everywhere. It was like on the things that I photograph on. I photograph on some pieces of wood that had glitter on it for days, but tip, you can use a Swiffer to get rid of a lot of that glitter. And I went through a couple Swiffers trying to clean up my craft room. And because I'd fill one with glitter and I'd toss it and I got it all. And then I'd have to go back and get another one, because apparently I didn't get it all, because it's everywhere. You can see how much crazy glitter there is there. But the cards are gorgeous and beautiful, and I'm happy I used the kit, and yeah, I have 12 cards with it. I'm just going to flash them all quickly. Like I said, there'll be a coordinating blog post. I used a lot of the same techniques that I mentioned over and over again. I hope there was something helpful about this video, or at least that you enjoyed seeing some different scenes created with the stamp set. Got some tips for how you might add Copics or Distress ink to help you build some faster scenes. Thank you for watching and putting up with this questionable at best voiceover here. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, 10 cards, 1 kit videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I promise most of them have more ideas than this. And have an awesome day. Bye.